He's out there time and again for working families and against corporate greed and irresponsibility. Let's give a warm AFT welcome for our AFL-CIO President, Richard Trumka.
Morning, brothers and sisters. Randy, I want to thank you for that great introduction. And I want to thank all of you, quite frankly, for inviting me here as the warm-up act for Bill Gates. I appreciate that. I give you greetings from the 11.5 million members of the AFL-CIO and also my two partners, Secretary-Treasurer Liz Schuler and Executive Vice President Arlene Holt-Baker. Please do. And I also bring you our gratitude for all that you do to lead our movement and to build the living standards that we so desperately need in the 21st century economy. You see, in the midst of an economic crisis, large-scale layoffs and funding crises in our public schools, our colleges and our universities, our healthcare system, and our state and local governments, the AFT has grown to 1.5 million members. That's a feat that you ought to be proud of. You got it the old-fashioned way, you earned it, and we're all proud of you. And you're not only helping classroom teachers organize, you're also enabling the organizing of college faculty and school aides and healthcare professionals and state employees and early childhood educators. You bet. You're proving that people in what the economists call non-standard employment arrangements, temporary and part-time employees, should not have to settle for substandard wages and benefits, and that higher ed should not mean higher abuse. By bringing the benefits of unionism to the new frontiers of the knowledge economy, you're giving the entire labor movement a glimpse of our future, and we thank you for it. You're doing a great job under great leadership. And your president, my friend, Randy Reingarten, reminds me of one of the toughest and smartest and most caring teachers that I ever had. You know, I've seen her school our friends in the Obama administration. As you know, I'm a strong supporter of President Obama, and when he speaks, frequently I want to stand up and clap. But on the morning of March 1st, he said something that left all of us very, very upset, to put it mildly. He used the mass firings of teachers in Central Falls, Rhode Island, as an example of what should be done in the schools when all else fails. And on that same day, Randy and I were in Orlando, Florida, for a meeting with the AFL-CIO Executive Council. And that afternoon, Vice President Biden came to talk to us. Now, usually at these meetings, we try to be very subdued and respectful. But on that afternoon, Randy, understandably, wasn't feeling too deferential. As you know, the toughest thing to do as a leader is to tell your friends when they're wrong. And Joe Biden is a friend of this union, and he's a friend of the labor movement. But Randy stood up and told our nation's vice president that the administration was wrong. Wrong. Wrong to celebrate what happened at Central Falls, and even more wrong to hold up the mass firings as a panacea for our public schools. She was powerfully articulate, and I'm not going to lie, she got a tad heated. The Secret Service guys started looking a little jumpy when Randy put her finger on the Vice President's chest to emphasize her point. But you know what happened after that exchange? The conversation changed. Instead of Central Falls being a bold action to be celebrated, political leaders from Rhode Island to Washington, D.C. started seeing it as a problem to be solved. And with all of your help, it got solved. Now, the themes of this convention, unions reaching out to the community and serving as agents of change, couldn't be more timely or more deeply rooted in your history and your heritage. You see, our economy is in crisis. Working Americans are concerned about keeping their jobs, keeping their paychecks, and keeping their retirement security. The institutions where AFT members work, our public schools, our colleges and universities, our hospitals, our preschools, and our public agencies are more essential now than they've ever been. But our public schools and our public services and our public employees of all kinds are also very endangered. In fact, you're up against a triple whammy. With the severe recession and soaring unemployment, tax revenues are taking a dive, and state and local governments and school districts are facing financial crisis. And as always, when hard times hit, the demands on our public schools and our public services always are increasing. And you see it all firsthand. More kids need subsidized school lunches, more patients in the emergency rooms, longer lines for unemployment insurance and public assistance. But because Americans are so anxious and angry, and rightfully so, I might add, there's a growing danger that they will shortchange public services and scapegoat public employees. You see, that's one more reason why we have to provide the real reasons why America got into this mess, and a roadmap for how we can get out of this mess. As you all know, George Bush left us with the worst economy since the Great Depression. Oh, feel free. That's the least we can do. He deserves a lot more than that, I can say, but he gave away trillions of dollars in tax breaks to the wealthy. He let Wall Street and the big banks run wild. He inherited a rare federal budget surplus, and he transformed it into a record federal deficits. And since the recession started in 2007, we have a 10.5 million jobs hole. And even those who are fortunate enough to be working are living in fear of pink slips and givebacks and hollowed out health care, foreclosures, and pension freezes. We absolutely must provide emergency assistance to hard-pressed states, cities, and school districts. We've got to head off the layoffs of teachers and school aides and college faculty and police officers and firefighters and other public service employees. We need pink hearts, not pink slips, as your pin says, and I'm proud to wear. And I wish that every member of Congress would wear one of these pins And even more importantly, that they'd take that message to heart, because we've got to extend unemployment benefits for those looking for work in the worst economy in 70 years. We've got to extend COBRA benefits and provide Medicare assistance to the states. And we got to fund local infrastructure projects and invest in the brilliant new technologies of the future, from biotechnology to alternative energy sources, so that the science and math teachers can tell their students to study hard and to aim high and to build their futures in their classrooms and libraries and laboratories. See, now every time that we try to dig ourselves out of the hole, out of the 10.5 million job hole, someone says to us, they jump up and say, oh, but what about these deficits? Well, that's not to say that the deficit, the federal deficit, long-term doesn't deserve attention. It does. But that's a long-term problem, because we do not have a short-term deficit problem in this country. We have a jobs crisis that must be addressed immediately in this country. And unless we do it soon, we'll not only make the nation's economic crisis worse, depress federal revenues, and deepen the deficit for decades to come. And if we fail to invest in education, we will saddle future generations with deficits that they will never be able to dig their way out of. A skills deficit, a technology deficit, and an economic competitive deficit. See, when it comes to passing a jobs bill, we've heard excuses that sound like a lot of kids telling their teachers that the dogs ate my homework. And on the heels of an economic catastrophe that was created on Wall Street, we've even heard some members of Congress proposing to cut workers' unemployment benefits by $25 a week, while at the same time protecting wealthy investment managers from being taxed at the same rate as working people are. And in the elections this November, you can give your elected officials and every candidate the report card that they deserve, because if any member of the House or Senate from either party really wants to see teachers lose their jobs and kids lose their teachers and families lose their health insurance, then they better believe that we will remember in November, and we'll send them back to the public sector that they seem to love so much. When public officials don't provide solutions, what do they normally do? They try to pick out and pick on scapegoats. See, it's not bad enough that public employees are made the fall guys for the economic crisis, but now politicians and pundits are trying to present public employees as fat cats. See, the governor of Indiana, Mitch Daniels, now, he used to serve as George W. Bush's budget director. And I got to tell you, being George W. Bush's budget director is about one small rung above the captain of the Titanic, right? See, he recently called public employees the new privileged class in America. And the governor of New Jersey, Chris Christie, What was that again? See, he's making the talk show circuit and he's bragging about balancing the budget on the backs of public school teachers. And the publisher of U.S. News and World Report, the real estate magnate, Mort Zuckerman, has condemned what he calls the new privileged class in America. And believe it or not, they're pointing at you. Now, I know that as public school teachers, you've always had to cope with every social and economic problem in our community. And now, not only do you have to cope with them, you're being blamed for them. You've always understood that the challenges of low-income families end up in your classrooms, and that the struggles of cleaning workers and clothing workers are your struggles, and that the best way to build what your founders called education for democracy is to build a stronger labor movement. And that's why the AFT and the AFL-CIO support the Employee Free Choice Act, and we will keep fighting for it until every worker, every last worker, has the right to a union and can call themselves union brothers and sisters. Now, we understand that we're all in this together, whether we work in the private sector or the public sector, or whatever our background or our walk of life. That lesson of American community and our common destiny is what you teach in your schools and practice in this union every day. And I was reminded of those lessons last month when I spoke at the graduation ceremony at my high school. It's in the coal country in Pennsylvania, and it's called Carmichael's Area Senior High School. And we call ourselves, and don't laugh and don't ask me to explain why, but we call ourselves the Mighty Mikes. Now, many of our moms and our dads worked in coal mines and construction sites and clothing factories. And many of our parents and grandparents were immigrants from Eastern and Southern Europe. And most of us figured that we'd follow our parents into jobs that were paid by the hour. But guess what? Our teachers taught us to respect ourselves. They taught us to enrich our lives with the love of learning. And for some of us, some fortunate few, to follow our dreams beyond the world that we knew back in Nemacolin and Carmichael's. And we learned the lesson, still not always put into practice, that Americans do better when we stand together and answer the challenges of our times. So when this convention is over and you return to your responsibilities back home, I ask you to reach out. Reach out to all the working people in your community and build a movement that can change this country forever and for the better. Tell your friends and your fellow workers, if you want to build a better life for yourself and a better chance for your children, then stand together. If you want Americans to have world-class skills so that we can create and preserve middle-class jobs, then stand together. If you believe that America must invest in education and the environment and training and technology and health care and home ownership, then stand together. If you believe that when you call 911, somebody ought to answer, you should get a cop or a firefighter or a healthcare worker and not Halliburton, then stand together. And if you believe that Wall Street got us into this mess and must pay their fair share to get us out, then stand together. And if you believe that quality public schools are our solemn responsibility to our children and grandchildren grandchildren, and that Social Security and welfare are our moral responsibility to our parents and grandparents, then stand together, work together, march together, vote together, fight together, win together, stand together, and no one will ever be able to stop us. God bless you.